Hello friends, welcome to session 5. The title of this session is Probability Based Classification, an important session. Let's see what this is all about. Okay, so the last time we had an assignment and the assignment was to do with a pack of cards. Okay, if you drew 10, 20 and 100 cards out of a pack of cards with replacement, you were to guess the number of red cards that you would draw and the number of picture cards that you would draw. Okay, so I hope these are your guesses. I have put my guesses over here. You were first supposed to perform guesses, and let me tell you why these are the correct guesses. Now, if you're talking of red cards, there are 26 out of 52. 26 out of 52 cards are red cards. So half of the cards are red cards, 0.5. Given this fact, 5 out of 10 drawn cards should be red. This should be your guess. Okay, I'm talking about guesses, not about actual experiments. So these should have been your guesses. Exactly half the number of cards drawn are expected to be red. So these should have been your red guesses for red colored cards. For picture cards are 12 out of 52. 12 because 3 into 4, right? 3 per suit and 4 suits. So 12 upon 52, and that is 0.23. So proportionately your guesses should have been 2, 5 and 23. Okay, this should have been the number of guesses for picture cards. Now the actuals will of course differ. They will differ not only from your guesses, but they will differ from individual to individual. The last thing that you were supposed to compute are these ratios. Okay, are these ratios. And the thing to notice here would be that as the number of cards drawn increases, these ratios would tend to 0.5 in case of red colored cards and 0.23 in case of picture cards. Okay, if these were not your guesses, these numbers, I recommend you take a moment, take a break, a few minutes, and convince yourself that these should have been your guesses. Okay, take a few moments, because that is at the heart of what we are going to be looking at today. ओके तो ये हमारी असाइनमेंट थी, और आपके अगर आपने जो गेस किया था अगर वो ये नहीं है तो प्लीज़ आप थोड़े से इस पे थोड़ा सा ध्यान दीजिए और ये गेस कैसे होते हैं इसके बारे में थोड़ा सोचिए. Okay, let's move on. Let's introduce the idea of probability. Okay, the word probability in tech means thankfully exactly the same thing that it means in English. Okay, so what is the probability of an event? If you ask this question, it basically means how likely is that event to occur. Okay, how likely is that event? It's also the ratio of ways in which that event can occur. Okay, so for example, you were dealing with red cards. Red cards are 26 out of 52. The ratio is 0.5, and that is the probability of drawing red cards. Okay, so the ratio of ways in which the event can occur. Probability is expressed as a fraction, a number between 0 and 1. Probability of 0 means the event is essentially impossible, and a probability of 1 means that the event is a certainty. It's certain to happen. Okay. Okay. So like I said, the chance of getting a red card is 50%. Same thing expressed in technical language, probability is 0.5. Chance of rain today is 10%. Another way of saying it is that probability of rain today is 0.1. तो probability एक technical term है, और ये होती है 0 और 1 के बीच में, और basically chance, किसी event का chance कितना है, ये इसके लिए हम probability का इस्तेमाल करते हैं. Okay. Conditional probabilities. We looked at what probability is. There is also something called conditional probability. Okay, conditional probability is how likely is an event X. How likely is an event X if you know that some other event Y has occurred. Okay, so it's not just event X, it's not just the probability of event X independently on its own, but it is the probability of event X if you know that some other event Y has occurred. This is known as the conditional probability of an event X given that Y has occurred, and this is the notation that is followed. Okay, probability of X given, this stands for given that Y has happened. Okay, so this is probability of X given that Y has occurred. So for example, I'm giving some examples. Probability of rain is 10% given that it is March. If you are in the month of March, the probability of rain is 10%. Probability of rain is 90% given that it is July. So if these events have occurred, then the probability of rain changes. राइट तो ये थोड़े से टेक्निकल टर्मिनोलॉजी है, कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटी के बारे में मैं भी बता रहा था. तो हर टेक्निकल चीज का हिंदी में अनुवादन करना शायद थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा, तो आप प्लीज ये चीजों पे फोकस कीजिए. So this is what is called as conditional probability. Okay, very important to know. Okay, so here is one type of AI model and learning. Okay, one type. One way for an AI model to learn from training data is by computing the conditional probabilities of each group for each input type. I'll repeat this. One way for an AI model to learn from training data is by computing the conditional probabilities of each group for each input type. I have underlined these two words here. You will soon know why. तो AI मॉडल्स का एक तरीका लर्निंग करने का ये होता है कि कुछ कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज कैलकुलेट करना, और हम यही देखने जा रहे हैं कि कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज के आधार पे काम करने वाले AI मॉडल्स कैसे काम करते हैं. Let's go to the classification problem that we have been talking about for so long. Okay, so this was your training data, right? I mean, you had age and gender and group in the simplest example that we took. This comprised your training data, and then you had the AI model that was supposed to learn, and the groups were of course based on the attire of the person. For the sake of simplicity, I am going to just classify age instead of using the number. I am just going to classify it as young and old. So anyone below 40 years of age I'll call young, anybody above 40 I'll call old, with due apologies. Okay, I'm just doing it for the simplicity of explaining the concept, so that you understand exactly what the focus of this this lecture is. Now suppose your test input was a individual who was young, so below 40, and a male. Okay, how would this AI model learn, and how would it classify this test input? Okay, so this is what we are going to sort of take as an example to learn about conditional probability based classification. Okay, suppose you see a person whose young and whose gender is male. Here are the conditional probabilities that you first need to find. Okay, find the probability, the conditional probability that a person is in group X given that his age is young and his gender is male. So this in our notation is written in this way: probability that the person belongs to group A given that he is young and male, right? So you have to find this probability. Okay, similarly you have to find the conditional probabilities for the other groups given that you are dealing with a person who is young and male. So find the probability that a person is in group B given that age is young and gender is male, and similarly for group C and D. You have to find these probabilities, and after having found these probabilities you have to find which of them is the highest, which of them is the greatest, okay, largest. And depending upon which one is the largest, you are going to assign, you are going to predict that this particular person is going to fall in that group. Okay, so if probability of group B given young and male was the highest among these four probabilities, you would assign this person to group B. You would predict that the person falls in group B if this was higher than the others. Now this is, look at this, this is a fairly logical thing to say, right? I mean, if given that you are young and male, you know that the input is young and male, given that the person is young and male, if you compare the conditional probabilities of him being in group A, group B, group C and group D, given that he is young and male, whichever of them is the highest, you assign the person to that group. This is a fairly logical thing to say. तो हमें ये conditional probabilities find out करनी है और इनके आधार पे काफ़ी सरल चीज़ है कि जिनमें से जो conditional probability सबसे ज़्यादा होगी उस ग्रुप को हम इस इंसान को असाइन कर देंगे. Right? So this is logical. If you knew the conditional probabilities, these 4 conditional probabilities, assigning it to the highest, the one with the highest conditional probability is the way to go about it. That's obvious. The question now is in everybody's mind, how do you find these conditional probabilities? How do you find all of these 4 probabilities, 4 conditional probabilities? ये conditional probabilities हम कैसे find out करेंगे? यही तो सवाल है. Right? These are found on the basis of your training data. Okay, हमारे training data के आधार पे ये conditional probabilities find out करते हैं हम. कैसे करते हैं? So what is the probability that a person, example के तौर पे, what is the probability that a person is in group A given that he is young and gender male? So this is one of the conditional probabilities you had to find. How are you going to find this conditional probability? And the answer is, this conditional probability is a ratio of the number of rows which have age equal to young, gender equal to male and group equal to A, divided by the number of rows where the age is young and gender is male. Okay, so the numerator has additionally group is A, whereas the denominator does not have that. So you can look at this carefully. Now let's see, let's find out the denominator first, right? So number of rows with age equal to young and gender equal to male, I have highlighted those rows here, 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 here and so on. Right? So totally 7, right? So the denominator is 7, right? And the numerator, now out of these 7 rows, how many were observed to be in group A? 1, there is 2 and there is 3. Okay, so 3 divided by 7. We just agreed in slide 1 that the probability was going to be the ratio of the number of ways in which an event can occur. So this, the probability of group A given young and male is going to be 3 upon 7, right? Okay. So this is 3 upon 7. Similarly, you can find for probability for group D given young and male. Now there is only one such person. Group D was a woman's dress. It turned out that there was one young male who was walking around wearing a woman's dress. So the probability of group D given young and male, probability of group D given young and male is equal to 1 upon 7. Okay. So similarly, you can find all the conditional probabilities, and you know, this is the way to do it. I mean, these are the conditional probabilities. They are linked to the data that you gathered as your training data. तो इनपुट के आधार पे इस प्रकार से कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज आप फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं, जैसे मैंने क्या अभी बताया. ये आप एक ए वाले कितने हैं ये लेंगे, 3 है इन 7 में से, तो 3 upon 7 इज ग्रुप ए, प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ ग्रुप ए गिवन यंग एंड मेल. तो ये इस तरह से आपको करना है. तो ये प्रोबेबिलिटीज, कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज आपके पास आ गई, राइट? और इनके आधार पे आप डिसीजन ले सकते हो. अगर ग्रुप ए गिवन यंग एंड मेल सबसे ज्यादा है ग्रुप बी, सी और डी से, तो इस इंसान को आप ग्रुप ए में प्रेडिक्ट करके असाइन कर दोगे. Okay, so this is a slightly packed slide, but if you sort of spend a minute on it, you will see what it's about. So if you see a young male, you are going to find the conditional probabilities of 4 groups given young male, okay, and you are going to find the max of these and assign the person to that group, right? If you see an old male, you will find the conditional probabilities given old male. All of them are given old male, right? For the 4 groups, and depending upon which of these is maximum, you assign the person to that group, and so on. Similarly for the other scenarios, young female and old female, right? So there are total of 16 conditional probabilities that you will see on this page, and you can find all 16 of them from the training data. So this is the way in which you predict based on conditional probabilities. Okay, so learning for this AI model means simply the computation of conditional probabilities from training data. So when we kept saying earlier, I mean, you give training data, the AI model learns, so on and so forth. What exactly did it mean? For this particular model based on probabilities that works on the idea of probabilities, learning simply meant computation of conditional probabilities from training data. तो जैसे कि मैंने पिछले स्लाइड पे भी बताया, आपको कई सारी कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज कैलकुलेट करनी पड़ेगी ट्रेनिंग डेटा से, और इस एआई मॉडल के लिए यही तो होगा लर्निंग. Now a few obvious facts. More the training data, better the calculation of probabilities. देखिए हमने पहले स्लाइड में बताया था कि जैसे आपके नंबर ऑफ कार्ड्स बढ़ते चले जाएंगे, आपका रेशो उस प्रोबेबिलिटी की ओर बढ़ता चला जाएगा. सो जितना ज़्यादा ट्रेनिंग डेटा होगा, आपके कैलकुलेशन ऑफ प्रोबेबिलिटी वुड बी मोर एंड मोर एक्यूरेट. When the training data changes, the probability changes. Very clear. Training data to cover all input types to allow calculation of all probabilities. We had referred to this in the earlier session. We said that the data needs to be balanced, etc., etc. Clearly, if your data was unbalanced, if it did not suitably cover some categories or certain classes, you would not have those probabilities, and that would be a problem for you. So these are the 3 things that clearly spring from this sort of a learning model. Caution, I have a caution for you. I mean, this may be obvious to some people, but it's a caution. Probability of A given B does not equal to probability of B given A. Okay, you can think about this for a moment, pause the video, think about this, but this will be clear to you. Okay, probability that a person is in group A, given that age is young and gender is male, is not the same thing as probability that a person is young and male given that he is in group A. Okay, so these are converses of each other. To give a simpler example, probability of rain given that it is March is not the same thing as probability of it being March if it is raining, right? So these are clearly not equal. So this is just a word of caution for you, so that if in your project you are going to compute conditional probabilities, make sure you are computing the conditional probabilities in the correct direction. They are related, but they are not the same. So this type of a classifier that relies on classification based on probabilistic models is called a Bayesian classifier, named after a gentleman named Thomas Bayes. He was also the person who provided the Bayes theorem that relates the forward and backward probabilities that we discussed earlier. We will discuss Bayes theorem later. तो हमने पिछले स्लाइड में यही देखा कि ये कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज A गिवन B और B गिवन A सेम नहीं होते हैं, और तो आप जब आपका मॉडल डेवलप करोगे तो सही कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज कैलकुलेट करना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है. ओके, सो to summarize there, I mean, the computer, when you give the training data, your computer is going to compute these conditional probabilities, and that is what comprises learning. Okay, let's go to the Bollywood assignment. I had also given, for those folks who were not who were extremely familiar with probabilities and did not do the cards assignment, you had a Bollywood assignment that said name a movie whose story would have been completely different if the characters had known about probabilities. Okay, so this was the Bollywood assignment. My answer, ये हमारा Bollywood assignment था कि कोई मूवी बताना था जिसमें अगर उसके कैरेक्टर्स को प्रोबेबिलिटी के बारे में पता होता तो वो शायद मूवी की स्टोरी अलग होती. ये हमारा बॉलीवुड असाइनमेंट था. तो इसके अलग अलग उत्तर हो सकते हैं, आपका उत्तर शायद अलग हो, मेरा उत्तर मैं बताता हूँ और ये क्यों है वो भी मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. तो मेरा उत्तर है शोले. माई आंसर इज द मूवी शोले. Okay, this was a sort of a very, very famous movie back in the day. Um, okay, so what happens in this movie is that Amitabh Bachchan, from time to time at crucial junctures in the movie, keeps tossing a coin, okay, and it always ends up being heads, and he gets his way with it, right? And this happens repeatedly in the movie at various points in time. Now we know that, as we saw in this session, the probability of getting heads in a fair coin is half, and the probability of therefore of getting 3 consecutive heads would be half multiplied by half multiplied by half, which is about 12.5%, which is a small number, right? It's not a large number. However, in the movie, none of these other characters that you see here, Dharmendra or Sanjeev Kumar, whoever, none of them are like surprised that Amitabh Bachchan is constantly getting heads, and they have, they just carry on with life as normal and let him have his way. I mean, consider the probability of 6 consecutive heads is barely 1.5%, right? I mean, it's 1.5%. So clearly this should have evoked certain curiosity, or it should have raised an alarm in the minds of these people, and they should have caught on to Amitabh Bachchan's act fairly early in the day, and that would definitely have changed the course of the movie. So therefore my answer is Sholay. Okay, these people did not show any alarm at some very improbable events happening in the movie, and if they had, the course of the movie would have been different. That's the reason for my answer. Okay, so मेरा उत्तर शोले है. शोले में यही होता है कि अमिताभ बच्चन उसका जो सिक्का है वो उड़ाता रहता है, हर टाइम वही गिरता है, और उसकी बात सही होती है, और उस प्रकार से वो मूवी चलता रहता है. बाकी कोई लोग कुछ उसके बारे में कुछ नहीं कहते, किसी को कुछ शक नहीं होता. अगर उनको इस बारे में कुछ पता होता तो उनको शक होना था, राइट? तो ऐसे कुछ भी नहीं होता, इसीलिए मेरा आंसर शोले मूवी है. तो कुछ कैरेक्टर्स इस मूवी में ऐसे है, यह है ठाकुर बलदेव, राइट? मीन ठाकुर बलदेव को शायद हम माफ भी कर सकते हैं, राइट? ठाकुर बलदेव को हम माफ कर सकते हैं क्योंकि किताबों के पन्ने पलटने में उन्हें काफी दिक्कत होती थी, राइट? किताबों के पन्ने वो नहीं पलट सकते थे, तो उन्हें शायद हम माफ कर सकते हैं कि उन्हें प्रोबेबिलिटी के बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था. लेकिन ये दो दूसरे कैरेक्टर्स है, इनके पास काफ़ी टाइम भी होता था. जैसे आप देख रहे हो, ये है वीरू और बसंती. अगर वीरू और बसंती इसके बारे में, प्रोबेबिलिटी के बारे में या थोड़ी भी जानकारी रखते तो उन्हें शक होना था कि जो कुछ भी रामगढ़ में वो उस सिक्के के कारनामे है वो काफ़ी उसकी प्रोबेबिलिटी काफ़ी कम है, और उन्हें शक होना था. और अगर उन्हें शक होता तो शायद वो खोटा सिक्का पकड़ा जाता. लेकिन अफसोस की बात है, उन्हें कोई शक नहीं हुआ, वो अपने काम में बिजी रहे, और आखिर में इसके कारण जय को अपनी जान गंवानी पड़ी. तो यही रीज़न है, मुझे शोले करेक्ट आंसर लगता है. अगर आप मेरी बात से सहमत है तो एक तरीका है ये बताने का, आप लाइक बटन दबा सकते हैं, सब्सक्राइब कर सकते हैं मेरे चैनल के लिए. और हाँ, ये वीडियो की लिंक ज़रूर आप अपने दोस्तों को दीजिए, क्योंकि जैसा हमने शोले में देखा, अगर आपके दोस्त पढ़े लिखे हो, उनको प्रोबेबिलिटी के बारे में थोड़ी सी जानकारी हो, तो शायद वो आपकी जान बचा सकते हैं. तो ज़रूर आपके दोस्तों को ये लिंक फॉरवर्ड कीजिए. ठीक है, हम अगले लेक्चर की तैयारी करते हैं. तो अगले लेक्चर का असाइनमेंट ये है: वॉक थ्रू अ पार्क विथ लॉट ऑफ ट्रीज, occasionally pick a leaf on the ground and guess which specific tree the leaf belonged to. Okay, so walk in a sort of a wooded park. This assignment has nothing to do with Bollywood. It's a healthy assignment. Walk through a park with lot of trees and occasionally pick up a leaf and guess which specific tree. So if you find a mango leaf and if there are multiple mango trees around, try to identify which specific mango tree that leaf came from. Okay, that's the exercise. तो आपको किसी बगीचे में एक छोटा सा वॉक लेना है, जहाँ काफ़ी सारे पेड़ हो, और एक आध पत्ता बीच बीच में उठाना है, और कौन से पेड़ का वो पत्ता है ये आपको गेस करना है। तो अगर एक आपको आम का पत्ता मिल गया, आसपास कई आम के पेड़ है, तो किस आम के पेड़ का वो पत्ता है ये आपको गेस करना है। ओके, ये पत्ते घर नहीं लाने हैं, ये पत्ते आप वहीं छोड़ सकते हैं, लेकिन आप मन ही मन ये असाइनमेंट आपको करना है। तो ये असाइनमेंट आपके लिए अगले सेशन में काम आएगा। Okay, summary. So very important, a Bayesian classifier predicts on the basis of conditional probabilities. We learned what conditional probabilities are, and we learned how a Bayesian classifier works. Okay, and for a Bayesian classifier, the AI model learning involves computing the conditional probabilities from the training data. So the training data plays a role there. It helps you compute it helps the AI model compute the conditional probabilities on the basis of which the Bayesian classifier makes its predictions. तो ये हमारी समरी है। बेसियन क्लासिफायर कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज इस्तेमाल करता है, और ये कंडीशनल प्रोबेबिलिटीज आती है ट्रेनिंग डेटा से। ओके, सो दैट इज इट फॉर टुडे। दैट इज द एंड ऑफ टुडेज लेक्चर, टुडेज सेशन। I hope to see you next time after you finish the assignment. Thank you.